look and see if it actually copies. Oh, we're live. There we go.
Aha, we're
Now we're
live.
live. It's not broadcasting anything. Oh no, it is. It's broadcasting us now. We've been broadcasting for 6 seconds now, Richard.
All right. Well, then it's probably time for introductions.
More than likely. So why don't you lead off?
I am Richard the 50th, regional step pope for northeastern Wyoming.
I was gonna
Sorry,
say, when did you move
where
to
I was.
Minnesota?
I didn't.
Yeah.
Northeastern Wyoming, regional
No.
step pope for northeastern Wyoming.
Okay. And I am Michael. I haven't found my officiated certificate yet. Henderson Anderson, the prefect for the acceptance of an overwhelming verisimilitude. Esquire. I think Esquire was on the end. I gotta find my official certificate. I don't feel like I'm a real. What do they call that? Deacon. What's a deacon mean? What's deacon mean?
Deacons are ordained priest helpers.
Oh, priest helpers. Okay. I don't
Yes,
help the priest. I don't think we have a priest, do we? We do.
that I'm aware of.
We have a
I haven't.
minister. Well, wait a second. I'm the one whose name's at the top of the form. So I'm the one who's going to get hauled in for litigation. So anyway, welcome to the semi-daily broadcast. We want to do it twice a day. We haven't been able to do it once a day, but we're shooting for it. Broadcast of what are we broadcasting, Richard?
The good news.
The good
We're
news.
broadcasting good news.
Yes, there's not enough good news out there on the internet, and most of the good news out there on the internet is just sort of mediocre news. I'm looking at you, Huffington Post, but um, you know, and what type of good news are we talking about there, Richard?
Well, uh, that can be a little tricky. Yesterday we had to find good news with the uh, shooting down of UFOs over the
That's
weekend.
true. That's true.
But today we have some actual real good news. Survivors being found in Turkey after the devastating earthquakes.
That
8 days after.
huh? Let's see. There's okay. 8 days after, huh? Well, let's get some
So
information up here and let's look at some current news on this stuff. See what we got going on. All right. So the top stories today. It looks like rescuers keep digging for survivors a week after the Turkey-Syria earthquake. Uh, Death toll tops 41,000. Okay, that's not that good of news.
that's not that good of news. But
Well, it's
today
especially they rescued seven.
there are still people alive out there.
After how
That's
long?
after 8 days.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a testament to the human will.
And yes, it is a testament to human will.
Did you want to say something about God at that point? Huh?
Well, I thought about it, but the other thing I thought about was good fortune.
Well, Eris does look down upon people with fortune, a sort of bad fortune and good fortune, largely because she doesn't care. Um, you know, since that what we're focusing on is the philosophy behind Eris and everything like that. Um,
Uh-huh.
it could be considered a good news trait with that many people surviving, despite the fact that it looks like the death count doubled in a period of 2 days. Um, what other good things can come out of this situation?
Well, they've got a lot of damaged buildings that are going to need to be rebuilt, and they can be rebuilt stronger than they were before,
Right.
better than they were before. Probably
Well,
not faster than they were before, but
well, no, that's another piece of good news that I've heard about today. I looked at. Turkey detained building contractors. So I think the good news here is not only do these buildings have to be rebuilt, but Turkish justice officials targeted more than 130 people allegedly involved in shoddy and illegal construction methods. So the good news is that when they do put those buildings back up, the people building those buildings are probably going to pay a little bit more attention to what they're doing.
Provide quality work,
Or at least not as shoddy work.
or at least not as shoddy work.
Yes. See, that's, sometimes the good news is not as good as you'd want it to be, but it's still good. Remember, we're not here to provide great news.
We're here to provide good news.
We're provide good news. Because all news is good, at least. On some level. My wife called us a parody site. Or something like that.
Well,
I think it's actually more legitimate thing that we're looking at here. This is a good example. This is a natural disaster that we can't pin on anybody. There's no way we can pin the earthquake on anybody, largely because we're non-denominational and we don't ascribe to the fact that homosexuals are causing floods or trans kids are causing global warming, which is a weird one. I don't know if I've ever heard of that, but it could be. Somebody out there, I'm sure, has said that.
Surprise me.
Yeah. We're not... This is a natural disaster. Nobody can really blame anybody for... We can't blame anybody for this. I'm sure somebody out there is blaming the fact that, they're showing The Walking Dead on TV when kids can watch it, is the cause of this thing. Just like, butterfly in the tea of China, or price or whatever. I don't know how that phrase goes, but this here is a natural disaster. Can't hold anybody accountable for the actual natural disaster. So now we can look at it from a positive aspect, as positive as we possibly can, considering the massive negative impact it had on 41,000 people's lives, because we have to accept that it was a negative impact on theirs, but there is a positive outcome. That sounds horrible. The way I just phrased that.
I didn't think it sounded that horrible.
Did you ever watch this? Did you ever watch this? There's a TV show out there on Netflix you should watch called Midnight Mass. It's fairly new. Huh? It is fairly new.
It's not advertised.
It is really good. But that's a large push by the Catholic priest in there who's talking to his flock at one point where he says, suffering is good. Good can come out of suffering. Good can come out of all this stuff. And I'm like, well, no, not really. But then I just stand up here and say the exact same thing. Good can come out of this. Not for everybody.
Good can come out of suffering. And if we live in a world where suffering is inevitable, which I think we do, then it's encouraging to know that it's not all bad. That good can come from it, even if it's outweighed.
How is that encouraging? That's a legitimate question. It's a legitimate question, and
I'm not sure I have an answer for it.
Oh, maybe we'll have to bring that up next time we talk about some good news.
Maybe so. I'll think on it.
I do like the fact that despite the fact that this thing happened, they are holding some of these building construction people who slap together stuff and charge people a lot of money, holding them accountable. It says here that rescue workers extracted more survivors today, including a pregnant woman and 2 small children, 6 days after a pair of earthquake.
Yep.
2 small children. How in the heck would they survive for 6 days?
Well, it couldn't have been easy. Probably involves drinking urine.
Oh, I didn't need to know that. That's not good news. That's not. Have you ever seen these? I don't know if you can see them. These earthquake beds.
Earthquake beds.
Yeah.
Are they like hammocks?
No, they're like earthquake beds. They like
The earthquake safety bed. Every year.
they trap you inside the bed when it collapses. So like it shows that there's a lot of earthquakes and everything like that. And there's this 4-minute advertisement. I'm gonna watch the whole thing. I'm showing bits of it, and it shows a big picture of an earthquake following. And we have to figure out a way you can look at this stuff at the same time too, because it's important for you to realize. But the idea is it's like a coffin almost. So like when it senses an earthquake, it like drops you inside it, whoom, and then slams the lid on top of you, and then you're protected from dying with stuff falling on top of you.
And stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And it has air vents and it has a survival kit inside it and everything like that.
Okay, well that's a little better.
Yeah, well, the main thing I have a problem with this is the fact that I sometimes sleep with my arm hanging over the edge of the bed. And watching this video of the top slamming down or something, I'm thinking I might take more damage from this thing, regardless of there being an actual, especially if it's like, I could see if it's like a light earthquake that's enough to trigger it, but not enough to cause any real structural damage to the place I'm staying. That, I could walk away without an arm for no reason at all,
Yeah.
It's pretty. I mean, it could be good. One of my friends looked at it and said, "You know what? You know what that means? That's a pretty good example of how you're just buying a coffin for yourself." So
Yeah, that was what I thought.
it's like a pre-purchased coffin. So
If it doesn't, my cat is blocking my light. Come here, Zoro.
I'm also wondering if you're
If it doesn't work, at least you're already boxed up.
That's what I'm saying. It also makes me wonder a bit, though, is like, if you're in this coffin, in bed, if you're in this bed, and your apartment's on the 10th floor, and you end up going all the way down to say the 2nd or 3rd floor, probably very rapidly because of the way the buildings collapsed. Especially in the videos they showed. Is there enough cushion on your mattress, surrounded by metal walls and a metal ceiling, to protect you from ending up like a pancake anyway?
It's a good question.
Or-
Maybe.
Maybe. Is that your truly scientific understanding of the situation? Maybe.
That's my best guess from what I know.
That's a good guess. Don't get me wrong. It's a good guess. Because I would guess the same thing too. It would be sort of nice if we knew for a fact, though, that... Now, here's one thing that's upsetting. They arrested building contractors in Turkey, but Syria, nothing. They're not doing anything over on that side.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it would be really easy to justify not doing anything by saying, well, we've got so much demand for this work, we don't want to put a stranglehold on supply right now. And I suppose you could argue that that's a good thing. But I'm with you. I think it's better to know that the people who are doing the work are going to do a good job, who are not in it just for the money and are willing to do whatever to maximize profit.
It's very un-American of you to say that, but
you know,
as
be that
evident
as it may, okay with that.
As evident by several train accidents. We had a train crash, a derailment out here today.
Oh, did you?
with the big chemical spill out here today.
I heard today, and I don't know how true it is, but the source I heard it from is pretty trustworthy, that derailments happen somewhere in the United States about 4 times a day. And derailments with large chemical spills are less frequent. They only happen about 2 times a day.
I think that's very similar to an apologetic and everything. Because I have a tendency to think, well, we can look at that right now. Number of train derailments per year. Well, we can do actual fact checks. How many train derailments happen in... Now, this is from ABC News, so take it with a grain of salt, much like anything else from any news organization. But let's see. Ground and water. Media claims about the situation accurate. What might have caused the accident? This doesn't say anything about how many train derailments in the last year. It said weapons during World War One. Okay, let's see. A look at derailments back in East Palestine. That doesn't really help very much. Google is not making things working. I did see that they did create safer braking systems for trains that were hauling hazardous waste, but the company that made that train lobbied to have it excluded from the listing of trains that could catch on fire, even though it was filled with flammable stuff. The point of the matter is, and we can see this, we can just go with anything that happens in Texas, like the Texas chemical. Remember the Texas chemical areas that exploded?
Oh, yes.
Remember those?
That was
Took out...
Texas.
Yeah. And you know what Texas did to safeguard people? Because what happened was the press went in there and found out what all those chemicals were that were in there and why they were in there, and they shouldn't have been. So Texas passed a law in the state that prevented people from knowing what chemicals were stored in those places.
Yeah, that sounds like Texas.
That was the response. So, yeah. I mean, look at this one right here. For the 3rd time in a year, a freight train derailed at the same spot in Tacoma. You would think that infrastructure repair would take place at that point.
You would think.
But it
And
is...
you have a lot of new money for infrastructure now, so maybe it will.
Nah, I think they're trying to direct that all back to the wall again. Because that's going to come back up next year. You know that. All right. Well, we are pushing past our limit of people's patience for our first one. So I do believe that it's time for us to wrap up this edition of the Good News. We will be back tomorrow with even more good news. Hopefully, right? Right, Richard? You're going to find some even more good news?
I will look for good news.
You've been listening to the good news from the Cult of Brighter Days. I'm Michael, and this is
Richard the 50th.
Richard the 50th. Love that name. Beautiful. And we thank you for listening. Again, Cult of Brighter Days signing off. Anything last thing to say? Walk us out, Richard.
Each other.
Yeah, I now sound like Bill and Ted again.
Be excellent to each other and make your own good news.
That works. We'll stick with that for now. All right.